So, as you guys may or may not know, I recently challenged the host of the YouTube channel IslamGotAnswers to a debate on three different topics. One of those being the highly contentious, very controversial, and very often debated issue of the morality of child marriage. It's relevant in this particular circumstance, the debates against Islam, because, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the Prophet of Islam is frequently under fire for marrying a 9-year-old girl, and the morality of that is often in question by many different critics of Islam. And I'm not even saying that to kind of paint that in a negative light, because obviously I challenged him to that debate. I obviously agree with that conclusion. So, in challenging him to that debate, I thought to myself, what would be the best way to approach this topic? What would be the best way to start this off if I'm going to go and do this debate? And I looked at the discourse around this topic and how the debates are usually handled, because I thought, okay, well, maybe that would give me a good idea of how I should handle this myself. And I appreciate the way they do it, but I think that you can enhance the effectiveness of their points. They in this equation being the critics and the people who say that child marriage is immoral. Because usually what I will see is people jump straight into the science of the situation. People jump into saying, well, child marriage is wrong because it's harmful to children psychologically, mentally, physically, that kind of stuff. And I think that is good and has its place. But ultimately, I think what would be a lot more effective would be if this issue was framed as an internal critique. And I think there's a reason that it should be done, and then a reason that it needs to be done. Now, the reason that it should be done this way is because it's always best practice to do internal critiques of your opponent's systems. To say, well, even if we grant you your system, you're still in the wrong for this and this reason according to yourself and according to the system which you have set up. Because that way it puts the opponent on the defensive. So that's why you should do it, because it's always best practice. But then there's a reason that you need to do it. And I'll explain that as well. Because I think that if you're going to approach the topic of child marriage with Muslims, you need to do it in this way. And it depends. The reason I say that is because it's really going to depend on what perspective you're approaching the issue from. If you're approaching this from a secular perspective or a Christian perspective, or really just any kind of perspective outside of Islam, you should do an internal critique. Because if you are, for example, an atheist, many atheists concede that there is no ethical system that isn't subjective and preference based under atheism if it is true. Okay? And even if there was an ethical system that could ground itself, there's no way to ground the ethics of atheism. Even if there was, the schools of thought like hard determinist naturalism would say that you can't even be held morally responsible even if there was an ethical system, because you have no control over your actions. So any well-educated Muslim who understands the philosophy here can say to you, listen, you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no way to come and tell me that my ethical system is bad when you can't even ground your own ethics. So to put it bluntly, if you are an atheist talking about this issue, they do not care what you have to say. They do not care. They are not interested in hearing what you say because they know that you cannot ground your ethics in any meaningful way. Now, what's the problem with Christians using this approach, using the scientific approach? We can ground our ethics, so we don't have this problem. Yes, that is true. But you got to keep in mind that they believe Christianity is false. Although we have an overlap in ethics and ethical systems, that doesn't ultimately matter if, from their perspective, Christianity is false. So, it doesn't matter how many times we say it harms children and it's bad. If their ethical system either doesn't have a problem with child marriage, doesn't think child marriage is harmful, or has no issue with harming children, even if they were to grant us all those points. So what you need to do is you need to take the time to frame it as an internal critique. Say, from your own system, you cannot do child marriage and your ethical system suffers because of the fact that your own ethical system tells you that you cannot harm children. If you are able to present examples of that fact, if you're able to look within their sources and say, look, your own system tells you that you cannot harm children, you cannot exploit children, child marriage does those things, therefore, from your own system, the ethics of child marriage are not just questionable, they're immoral, which leads into a greater debate about whether their profit can be considered the pinnacle of ethics and the moral example for humanity. And that's a greater debate that is important and that does need to be had. Oh my gosh, look at that. I think I'm just dead here. Anyway, so that is a greater debate that does need to be had. But presenting this as an internal critique is the most helpful approach, is going to lead to the most fruitful outcomes, just because you're now putting them on the defensive, and now you're saying to them, hey, look, even from your own system, you cannot justify your position is unjustified. It's just a lot easier, a lot better, a lot more productive, and it doesn't take very much time. It doesn't take very much time to put that together. All you have to do is have a basic understanding of their sources, and you can do it. It's not that difficult. So those are my opinions on the best way to approach this issue. That's how I will be approaching this issue, because I was actually having a discussion with the host of IslamGotAnswers, and he does agree that the debate is ultimately about whose ethical system is true and whether his own ethical system allows for child marriage and the harming of children, etc. So he believes that those are the ultimate debates, and that is why, if you're going to have conversations about this topic, then you should frame it as an internal critique first and foremost, and then once you've established that their ethical system doesn't allow for harming children, then you can say, okay, well, child marriage does exactly that, therefore under your own system child marriage is immoral, therefore under your own system your profit is immoral. Very, very easy string of logic to follow there. So that's the That is the approach that I myself will be using. That is the approach that I think anybody who is going to discuss this issue in any kind of way should take this. They should take this in the logical way. They should not be emotional about the topic. I understand it's a heavy topic. I understand it's an emotional, serious topic. That doesn't mean you need to be emotional about it. That doesn't mean that you need to get heated and use a whole bunch of rhetoric. Just follow these steps, present it as an internal critique, and if you are correct, then their own ethical system is falsified. And you're still vindicated, and you can still justifiably hold the position that child marriage is immoral, which I hold. So let me know what you guys think of that approach, and let me know if you guys would refine it in any kind of way. Let me know if I explained this well. I had it a lot better articulated in my head, but I think I got the essence of what I'm trying to say across. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you want more content like this, dealing with all sorts of topics, from religion to politics, everything in between. And we will see you guys in the next video. God bless.